I'd like to call the committee meeting of the executive to order at 7:01. We have all administration present, and we have all of council except for Mr. Cowger. Mr. Demitzky.
Move to excuse Mr. Calver. He has a letter on file.
And a motion to excuse Mr. Janet.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to excuse Mr. Cowger from tonight's meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? He's excused. All right, we're here for the agenda item A1842, an ordinance establishing the salaries and benefits of the permanent part-time tax assistant 1 and setting the pay rate, terms, and other conditions of employment and declaring an emergency. I'd like to open up with our treasurer, Mr. Ramsey.
Thank you. We are here tonight to ask council basically for the ability to hire some part-time help. In short, the amount of, we've had the same, let me do it this way. We've had the same two ladies working in my office there, both the treasurer's and income tax office, since 1998 and 1999 respectively. So there were a couple of treasurers before me. We've kind of maintained the same structure, if you will, over those years. Yet the amount of work that the two ladies have had to do has increased over the years to the point now where, especially with the recent changes in law, I mean the past couple of years, you guys know all about that stuff. There's still even more work to be done. We're kind of at the point where we're struggling to get certain projects, what we call special projects, done when residents will call and ask for additional information on various things. We have a tough time getting around to some of those things. I can give you a little bit of data in terms of, in the past, we have maybe under 7,000 tax returns that would be processed per year. In fact, in 2013, my number shows about 6,697, and that increases and increases. Through October of 18 of this year, we're at 8722. The number of returns is increasing. The number of taxpayers, because our city is growing, is increasing. As you know, everybody now has to file a local income tax return. In the past, that wasn't the case. Now employers have to remit to us monthly, where in the past it was quarterly. So there are a lot of things that are outside of our control in terms of just the amount of work that has to be done. So what we would like to do is set up a part-time position where this person could work as needed, basically. We would like it to be at will, because there may be times where we don't need this particular person. We planned ahead and tried to carve out the amount of money that we would need to cover this position in the budget, and we put that into the interim budget. Trying to think of anything else that you folks need. The two ladies from the treasurer's office and income tax office are here in case anyone has any questions that I can't answer. They're not too keen on coming up and speaking like most people, so for whatever consideration council can give them, that would be helpful. But I guess I'll open up to any questions anybody has.
All right, with that, if there's any council or administration that has questions on this particular position. Mr. Winarski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real briefly, is this going to be treated as a separate contract, so when it comes time for negotiations, it's a separate contract, or how is that?
I would like it to be at will, because I think if it were to be a union position, I don't know how that would work in terms of seasonal work and things like that. So at this point, we're just asking for an at-will employee. Just so you know, the deputy treasurer, Karen, is an at-will employee, and the tax secretary, Laura, is part of the civil service. So that's how the office is structured right now. We have one of each in our office.
Okay, thank you. And I noticed that it seems pretty fair to me. I'm just going to speak my mind on it. It seems real fair. I mean, it's got 4 less vacation days than the new police position that we're looking for, so appreciate it.
It may be that we don't really deal with the vacations and stuff like that, given the nature of this kind of position. It may be that they don't even work on some of those days. But when we originally brought the legislation to you, we tabled it because we felt we needed to make some corrections, and we did that. And then when we had Gwen look at it again, she says, you need to put in there a lot of this other information that has to do with vacations and sick time and stuff, so that it's consistent. I think number one, and I think number two, I don't want to speak for the law director, that there may be a legal requirement in that it has to be in there, given that we're a statutory city. So a lot of this is certainly vetted by Gwen in that regard. So, you know, that's that.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Wodnarski. Mr. Ventura.
I agree also. It looks like it's a much needed position. That's something I support. So for the position itself, because the ladies understand the position and have been there so long, are they going to have a lot to do with choosing the ultimate successful candidate?
Well, it's ultimately up to me, but as they could tell you, I mean, I always listen to what they tell me.
Good.
So,
Okay.
yeah, the buck would have to stop at me, but I would certainly, you know, defer to them in, you know, whatever way that I need to.
Do you need any kind of an emergency on this, or I didn't?
We would like to have the person start February 1, because that'll be in the midst of tax season when we start getting returns, and we'll need the extra help. So I suppose, I think we put on there an emergency, but it could go a couple of readings if council needs it to, just so long as we could maybe have it. If we did it with an emergency, I suppose we'd have to have it done by the end of December. Would that be right, Mr. Law Director?
I'm sorry, say it again?
If we were to we wanted to be able to get this position started by the 1st of February. So if we had the emergency on it, I suppose it could go multiple readings so long as it's passed prior.
That's correct. That's correct.
And having extra time to hire someone a little bit earlier would allow you to train them, get them ready
Certainly,
faster.
certainly.
Okay. I would move to send this on to the floor, council, with the emergency.
Got a motion to take this to the floor, council, and we'll further questions after we get a second. Mr. Wodnarski.
So moved.
The only question I have is, when we're talking about those 30 days and how that works out, despite the law director. My understanding is they can't start interviewing and start the process until this is on the books, correct?
Because it depends on what the ordinance says. Does it say that to hire or to commencement date? What does the proposed ordinance say, Mr. Ramsey?
I think it doesn't speak to, it just speaks to shall, hire or shall employ, the council decides to establish, so we're establishing the position, I suppose is the operative word.
So, from my perspective, I imagine they could interview with the understanding that no position is established, and so I would say they could consider interviewing now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so that it's going to take 2 readings or 3 readings, or
Sure.
they have the opportunity to start now. They know where they can go with this.
Right.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dembinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for getting me the expanded job description. I appreciate that. That, I think, is something that we should always request before we really look at and, vote on something like this. So, thank you. That's appreciated. Actually, a request. You mentioned special projects. I know 4 to 5 years ago, we used to be able to submit our stuff online, and we can't do that anymore. It'd be good, especially now that we also have an IT manager and department, if we could tailor that back in to bring our city forward a little bit.
You mean in terms of filing returns?
Yes. I'm not a fan of the emergency. I wish we weren't adding it. Even with the emergency, I think we're gonna have to suspend council rules if we want to get this passed by the end of the year, unless we want to meet on Christmas Eve, which I don't think any of us do. I guess sometimes you have to do it. I wish we weren't, but sometimes you do. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dominski. Any further questions, Mr. Jan?
Yeah, noticing that you mentioned there hasn't been staff added since 1998, and considering the growth of our city, I think this is a wise move. Under the work environment and physical sensory requirements section of the job description, the bullet, let's see here, variable work schedule with longer hours during tax season, the third bullet down. If this is a part-time position, it's my understanding we cannot go over 30 hours, correct? Because we have to offer benefits.
I believe that's the case.
Yes, yeah, and we're aware of that, so we wouldn't violate those rules, if you will.
Because I know you're open on Saturdays and things like
Sometimes,
that.
yeah.
During tax season.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, we would be very conscious of that we wouldn't.
So this position would not exceed the 30.
Correct.
Thank you.
Plus, I don't want to go over budget.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jan. Any further questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Auditor.
thank you. Just a quick question. So Carol Schauber, who is in the auditor's office, she's a part-time payroll clerk. She works typically up to 30 hours a week, and I know during tax season she has come over as part-time help to support. So my question would be will that be alleviated from this position, from your perspective, or is that going to be, we'll see as we go?
I don't think it's going to be alleviated, because it's two different positions in a way. So, what do you think?
Basically, her position was opening and typing deposits, that's it.
Okay.
And that's really all she wanted to do, and she helped us,
Yeah.
I guess it has
A long
been 10
time.
years.
Yeah. So I just want to be able to communicate that to her effectively if there is
Yeah,
going to be an impact, and also make sure the budget reflects it accordingly.
Okay.
That's all.
Points.
Thank you.
Madam President.
Yes, just procedurally, I just want to let council, the members of council know what their options are. If you keep the emergency on, you can go 3 readings. According to what Mr. Law Director has said, there's really no reason, if they need somebody by the 1st of February, you could, if we do go 3 readings, the 3rd reading would be on the 14th of January. And with the declaration of emergency, it would take effect that evening and would allow them to train and have 2 weeks to train somebody before the 1st of February. So, so there would be that 2-week period. If you passed it in December on the 2nd reading, that would put it, that would have it go into effect on the 10th of December, and that would give them probably a month to get somebody trained. So, just want you to know procedurally what that does. And that's your.
Thank you, Madam President. We have a motion on the floor by Councilman Ventura and a second by Councilman Winarski to pass A 1842 onto the floor of council with emergency. Are there any more questions before we call a vote? We'll go ahead and call a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Passes 6-0.
Thank you, everybody, for your consideration. We appreciate it.
Before we adjourn, Mr. Mayor, do you have something you'd like to bring to the floor?
I would. Thank you very much, Chairman. I would like just take a few moments of your time. We're going to speak a little bit off topic. This isn't part of the committee, but I'm not asking for any official voting or any official action to happen tonight. This is for information purposes only. I have a press release in front of me. We've been working on this with the Law Department, Safety Service Director, and our Utilities Rate Council for quite a while on this. There was some ordinances. There was an ordinance brought up about the utility rate increase that the City of Amherst has that could be interpreted a number of different ways. So the city has made their mind up to err on the side of caution with this, and I do have a press release that will be available for anybody who wants it after this meeting, that we are going to roll back that utility rate increase to its original form back before April. And sometime in the near future, I'm hoping January, but it might be later than that, where a credit will happen for all those additional costs that were charged. You know, let us remember this utility rate increase is much needed. You know, this isn't going to make the utility increase go away. We're just going to do it a little differently. I think the ordinance needs to be revamped. I think we need to work on the ordinance. It's somewhat antiquated. So I'm going to ask for some help with that. And then we'll probably, looking back, I think maybe that increase could have been done over a period of time, so it wouldn't have been so much of an impact at once. So the press release is available. More information will be forthcoming. I would hope I have more to say about this during reports of administration during the next council meeting. But if Law Director has anything to add, I appreciate everybody's support. While this was going on, it was a real tough time period for all of us, but I think this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for taking the lead on this. When we had people, citizens and residents come to City Hall to discuss the rate increases and how it happened and why it happened, it was true to our attention, 91905, which talks about an automatic increase in rates by the Safety Service Director if the account dropped under a certain amount of money, $350,000. This is such an old ordinance that we would be we would lose our department if we had to wait to we had $350,000 in the account. That's how old the ordinance is and how antiquated it is. At that point, it permits the Safety Service Director to make increases to the rates on its own up to 5%, and then it talks about any further adjustments shall be deemed by City Council. So the mayor and I discussed that in the sense that it's very limited in nature. It discusses a raise of the rates only in the extent of if our funds are diminished under a certain level, $350,000. And it doesn't address any other abilities of the city to raise its rates for any other reason. And the Ohio Revised Code doesn't necessarily address rates per se, although the Ohio Constitution allows us as a municipality to address and increase our rates as the city finds to be fit and appropriate. So in spirit, in conjunction with the spirit of the ordinance, I felt it was appropriate that we look at this and just kind of peel this back from what had happened and allow City Council and actually the administration to increase the rates over time and after we revamp this ordinance, because this ordinance really has no business being on our books under our present operation of our electric department. So,
and I guess I really do want to make a shout out to Mr. Bullock. He really did bring this ordinance. He found it somewhere in the archives, brought it to attention on social media, and stood right there at the podium and mentioned this ordinance and that we were unaware of. So that's one of our residents really at work there. So I guess thank you. And that's it. I mean, like I said, I hope to have more to report during reports administration next week.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time to meet with our residents and meet with our law director, and in particular, this ordinance that was passed. I didn't support. I was going to vote against it for multiple reasons. But I'm glad to see you do this. I think it's in the best interest of the residents. I do agree with you, though, we will need some form of increases if we want to maintain our budget. So I like what you're doing, I respect it, and I appreciate you, taking this step, just from as an
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me take time out of your committee to talk about this. It's not to your subject, but thank you.
And I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Law Director. Without any further questions or comments in this committee, I'll go ahead, Mr. Dominski, and entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. I got a motion to adjourn. Mr. Winarski?
Second.
Motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. We will adjourn at 7:21.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Building and Lands Committee meeting. Start time is going to be 7:24 p.m. Stealing Mr. Miller's attendance record, everyone is present with the exception of Mr. Cowder, who is excused. In front of us is A1854. This is an ordinance approving and accepting the dedicated improvements for the reserve at Beaver Creeks Phase 1 and 2, and approving the subdivision plat. This was given to me by Council President, but I'm guessing I'm going to throw this to the administration first and see if you wanted to comment, and then we have some speakers here.
I do. The developers that are working on Beaver Creek, the reserve at Beaver Creek, are ready to dedicate their plat and their improvements. They've done some other work in town, and things have been going really well. Their house has been selling like hotcakes, I think, in their other development, so they're ready to make this one move. So they're here to ask you to accept those dedication, the improvements, and I would assume Mr. Brady would like to get up and speak, if that's okay, Chairman?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just to refresh council's memory.
Mr. Brady, sorry, name and address first. I'm sorry, part of the drill.
Yeah, Sean Brady, Canbrad Development, 1290 Bassett Road, Westlake, Ohio.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Just to refresh council's memory, last year in 2017, we went through a rezoning process for the property behind the Wellness Center off of Cooper Foster Park, and council approved it along with the subdividers agreements back in October of 2017. We chose to hold off and start work in 2018. We proceeded with the improvements throughout this year, and at this point they're completed with the exception of two minor items. And we're asking council to accept those improvements, which include the sanitary sewer, electric, and water. This is a private development, with those being the only public improvements. We're maintaining the storm sewer system and the roadway as part of the association. And if you may recall, these are all going to be single-story ranch homes. We think it's going to fill a tremendous market niche. We have a great pipeline of prospective buyers already that have been building over the year through our other marketing efforts at Quarry Lakes and just really through word of mouth. We haven't even put any signage up. And we're excited to get started on this. We think that this is the only project like this on the west side of Cleveland. And we just feel that it's going to really take off as soon as we get the green light to go ahead and plat this thing and start selling houses. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And just one more comment. Our all our utility directors and they're all on board with this. Our engineers on board again with just a small couple contingency items that I know that this developer will have fixed before we give any building permits. So administration does support this at this time. Thank you.
Throw it up to the floor of council. Anyone, comments, questions, thoughts? Mr. Miller.
Yeah, I believe I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. There's no tax incentive or anything going on in this development because that really caused a lot of problems in some of the others. So I appreciate the fact that that's still the case, that we're not messing with the taxing system of the schools or the city. So. But it looks great, and I appreciate you guys coming in here and building and developing a nice reserve, a nice development. Crossing two political jurisdictions is not easy.
Anyone else? Mr. Danghorn.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Very glad to hear that our utilities department did come through and mention that they are behind this and have reviewed the information prepared. So that was one of the questions I was going to just make sure that was all good. Also want to commend the developers thus far in paying attention to stormwater and runoff issues that have been dealt with. So thank you for that so far. Thank you.
That's all, Mr. Miller?
Yeah.
Thank you. Madam President?
Yes. This is phase 1 and 2. Is there a phase 3 planned?
Yes.
Is there a phase 4?
No.
Right, so
There's
that-
3 phases of development. We chose to put phase 1 and 2 in at the same time.
Okay. None of your streets are going to be dedicated,
That's correct.
which means that you're going to provide all maintenance of the streets, snow plowing, leaf.
The Holstein Drive is a dedicated cul-de-sac. There's a big, huge, it looks like a helicopter landing pad out there. That's actually being dedicated to the city because that is a public road that goes to that point. At that point, going north, it's all private.
And you said there were 2 minor items left on your punch list. What are those?
One is the generator that fuels the backup in case electric goes down. The gas for that is installed, but it hasn't been energized. And the other one is the telemetry for the communication of that lift station. There was some confusion, and it turned out to be obviously my fault. We didn't order the proper radio equipment that allows it to communicate with the service department, and that should be resolved here within the next 2 weeks.
Okay. The backup generator powers the lift station? Is that what you're
The
talking about?
lift station is powered by the city electric, but in the event that the electric goes down, the generator is powered by natural gas, which fuels that. But it also has the ability to be powered by a portable generator too.
All right, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Madam President. Anyone else? Mr. Carlson?
Yes, could I inquire as to the status of the deposit required with the city and the improvement bonds or maintenance bonds?
Yeah, so the maintenance bonds have been submitted. I sent a confirmation email last week, and I haven't gotten anything back yet, but I'm almost 100% sure they have both the bonds, and they're actually accurate this time. And then as far as the deposits, we make ongoing deposits. We put so many deposits in with the building department to cover all of like Bramhall Engineering's fees and things like that. So I would have to think we're up to date on our deposits.
Well, I mean, I think the subdividers agreement says that the developer, that in order for the city to accept the improvements, the developer has made the required deposit to the city auditor in the amount of 3% of the estimated cost of improvements as approved by the city engineer. So are you saying that that's...
Yes, and that was done at the beginning.
Okay, all right.
And I'll confirm, and actually, I will confirm before the next Monday's meeting that those are taken care of.
I believe the one you're referring to, we posted at the beginning,
Okay,
because they receive, the city constantly receives engineering invoices, and they have to have some monies to draw against. And the ones that I was speaking about before you clarified it were additional deposits that when they exceed that 3%.
Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I move to take A 1854 to the floor of council.
Mr. Janik?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion to take this to the floor of council, and a second. Before we take a vote, is there any comments or thoughts? If there is none, just do the voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against, nay? Passes 6-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Sean, here's a minute after this.
Mr. Miller?
Move to adjourn, please.
Mr. Gudzinski?
Second.
Motion is second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against, say nay. We are adjourned at 7:32.
I'm good to see you again.
No, no.